Hello, everybody. This is Ralph Fletcher, and this is Writing with Ralph. I've got my writing shirt on, so I guess that means we're going to be doing some writing and talking about writing. And this is session 5. I'm glad to have you guys with me today. And once again, we're going to be doing some writing, so I encourage you guys to get a writing utensils, get your notebook, get a pad of paper, some paper, whatever you need, iPad, laptop, whatever you're comfortable doing when you write. Um, let's start by reading a couple of poems. And this is a poem from my book, Water Planet. I talked about how I like to write about babies for some odd reason. So this is a poem called Babies, and it's a rhyming poem, kind of playful. So here we go, Babies. Faucets drip, pools cool, springs bubble, babies drool. Seas sparkle, lakes glisten, streams gurgle, babies listen. Rivers rise, flood and worse, water falls, babies nurse. Rain drenches, waves crash, water quenches, babies splash. Ice melts, cold creaks, hail pelts, babies leak. If you've had a little baby in the family, you know that they do sometimes, and in fact, they do several times a day. I think I've been sharing a lot of playful poems. I thought maybe I'd read one a little more challenging, a little bit more upper grade for the kids who are in 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th. You ever been to a supermarket or a store when some moms or dads start spanking their kid? It's very awkward. We have a thing in our culture in the U.S. that the parents get to discipline the kids. I think that's worldwide, really. But it does make you feel kind of a little bit awkward. So this is a poem about a kid who sees this happening. He's with his mom. He sees this happening, and the mother gets involved and interrupts the other mother who's spanking their kid. And this poem's called The Bravest Deed, and it's from my book, Relatively Speaking, Poems About Family. I'm shopping with Mom at the supermarket, and we see a woman yelling at her kid who looks about 3 or 4. She grabs the girl's arm, smacks her on the bottom, bang, 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 about 10 times hard. The girl is screaming, and the lady gets ready to smack her again, but all of a sudden, my mom sort of steps between them and asks, "Is everything okay? You're having a hard time, looks like. I remember." Now Mom points at me, laughing, actually calms that lady down, with that girl still sniffling, and me standing there hoping no one will notice my trembling hands. Let me just read you that last stanza. Now Mom points at me, laughing, actually calms that lady down, with that girl still sniffling, and me standing there hoping no one will notice my trembling hands. And I guess the thing I want to leave you with is a tip on writing, which is I don't explain why the hands are trembling. The hands could be trembling for many reasons, right? Maybe the kid's afraid the mom's going to get involved, or maybe the kid's embarrassed, or maybe the kid's remembering a time that he or she got spanked. And what I want to say is that, and this is something to remember, and maybe even to write down if you're keeping tips about writing, in poetry, don't explain too much. Put out that detail, the trembling hands, and let the reader interpret it. Sometimes we can have a great line like that, and then we sort of explain it too much. And by explaining it, you take all the life out of the poem. So a good poem leaves a space for the reader to enter into it and put their interpretations on it. All right, so there we go. I really have been enjoying reading your writing. A lot of you have been sending me stuff. I've been getting pieces about the good old days, your version of the good old days. I've been reading some of the really wonderful descriptions of things where you guys have leaned in and described something in some great detail. And I've been reading a bunch of wonderful pieces where you tell me where you're a straight A student in an area that's not an academic area, not in school, but some other area that you really feel like you're an expert. please send me your writing. I'd love to see the maps. We talked last time about making a map of your neighborhood. I haven't got too many maps from kids, but I'd love to see them. You can email them to me at figpudding@gmail.com, or have your parent do that. And I just want to say something, if we may, before we kind of get really too deeply into this. I've been ending all these sessions by giving you a prompt or a suggestion about what to write about. And if you watch these videos only, you might get the idea that I believe that's the way you teach writing, or that's what writers need. Actually, I really am a big believer in choice. I think kids should be choosing what to write about. And you might say, well, then if you believe in choice, why are you giving us all these prompts? It's a good question. I thought about that a lot. I thought that in the 20 minutes we had together, it might be nice to have a little jumping off point or a springboard or something to get you thinking. But I want to say all the time, you should be choosing what to write about as much as you can, especially in your own writer's notebook and with your personal writing. And I would say to those of you who feel like you're a reluctant writer, the best way to get writing is to find something that you really care about, that you're interested in. And it could be something like video games. It could be horror movies. It doesn't have to be some special, heartfelt, sincere piece of writing. It could be just comedy or outer space adventures. So you probably heard this term called the just right book. Like if you're a young reader and you find a book that's just right for you, and this is probably true for readers of all age, that you really can have a powerful experience when you just have that encounter with a just right book that's just right for where you are at that point in your development as a reader. Well, the same thing is true with writing. One of the ways that you can really write well is to find a just right topic to write about, or subject. So even though I've been giving you suggestions to write, I would really urge you to choose as much as possible. Choose something to write about. All right. Now, we have been talking a lot about writing and a lot about the writer's notebook. And I wanted to read you guys something that I wrote about in my notebook. So just see here. Yeah. This is kind of a little funny entry that I want to share with you guys. On a hike, we ran into a woman who was walking with her 10-year-old daughter and their dog, a big collie. "What's the dog's name?" I asked. "Well, he has 2 names, she told me. "Really?" I said. She said, "Yeah. When he's nice, we call him Bliss. But when he's not so nice, we call him Blister." I thought that was funny. And I put that in my notebook. Now, I just want to say something about the notebook, too. We've talked a lot about it. Maybe we've over-talked about it. But your notebook doesn't just have to include, writing. I use my notebook, and I put in lots of, photographs. My kid wrote me these notes. I taped them in here. There was a teacher who did a really nice calligraphy of my name, and of course with my handwriting, I could never do that in a million years. One time my son, for Father's Day, my son Robert sent me this poem, and I love it. I just love it, and I put it in my notebook. I'll read it to you. This is a poem about a poem of a little boy who was writing a poem, and in this poem there was a little boy who was writing a poem for his dad. The poem was about how the boy wanted to thank his dad for what he had done. I love the rhythm of that one. So I use my notebook a lot of times just to put, things. I went to Cannon Beach, Oregon, and I was staying at this nice hotel, but I noticed that they had like a whole thing about like how to survive a tsunami, because if the tsunami comes and there's some kind of a big wave or earth, or, tsunami, that can be very dangerous. So this is, it said April is Tsunami Awareness Month, and actually that was in Hawaii. So, but I've seen them also in Cannon Beach. But, and of course, I was in Hawaii in April with my great timing. We didn't have any tsunamis there, but something else. So I just love to collect things in my notebook. Let me just see one more here if I can find it. Oh yeah, one of my kids did a really cool doodle. And I just put that in my notebook so I could collect it. Yeah. All right, so there we go. And I would like to now talk about how one of my ideas got generated. Um, and you may even have heard this story if your teacher knows a lot of my work, but if you don't know it, maybe it'll be fun for you to hear it from me. Anyway, so I took my son Joseph trick-or-treating. It was third grade. It was the last year he would let me take him trick-or-treating. In fourth grade, he says, "Dad, I'm going with my friends." But third grade, he was a little bit spooked, so we went out trick-or-treating. There was a beautiful big moon in the sky. And it was kind of a 4-in-1 thing. It was a full moon, it was a Halloween moon, it was a harvest moon. It was also a blue moon, which is the second full moon of a month. And you've probably heard that expression, once in a blue moon. Well, anyway, I started thinking about the moon. You know, the moon is one of those things that everybody loves. Like, nobody looks at the moon and gets in a bad mood. And if you take a baby out at night, if you take a baby out in the daytime, like right now it's sunny here, a baby wouldn't look at the sun and say sun because it's too bright. But if you take a baby out at 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock and they see the moon, that baby might say moon. It's one of the first things we kind of connect to. So in my notebook, just like I did with Twilight Comes Twice, I started collecting ideas about the harvest moon, about the autumn moon. And I wrote, something is rising low in the trees, something is stirring at the edge of the world. And then I wrote that lunatic is connected to lunar. If somebody calls you a lunatic, it's because people used to believe that the moon makes people act crazy. And then I wrote, I was getting kind of silly, and I wrote, moonshine, moonlight, make sure you wear your moon screen or else you get moonburn tonight. So I think it's important to just say that when I put stuff in my notebook, I put good lines, bad lines, weird lines, funny lines. I just collect all kinds of stuff. And later on, I'll go through and sort them and maybe take out the best lines and put them in the final book. I always think about one of the metaphors for the writer's notebook is if you think of trying out for a sports team, these are the tryouts, and then the finished book is the all-star team, the best lines that come out of the notebook. So I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and just like you've got teachers who give you ideas, authors have editors who give us ideas, and so I have a wonderful editor who gave me some suggestions about how I might tweak it and kind of focus it more, and that was really helpful. And also, I started thinking about the kind of things that actually happen in the autumn part of the year. So I finally get my book accepted, and she was going to, work with me and get it to be published. And the same illustrator, Kate Kiesler, who illustrated Twilight Comes Twice, was going to be the illustrator. So she took my words and she made this, and this is called a dummy, which is kind of a funny word, but it's like a mock-up of the book. And you can see the words are kind of glued on and taped on the page. And so she didn't put the moon up here, but she has the word moon, just so you know that it's going to be coming up there. And we decide where the words are going to be in the page, where the page breaks are, what illustrations will go with them. And I want to show you this one page. This is kind of interesting. This book needs a little bit of repair. So she said to me, see over here, she said to me, I added a raccoon. And obviously those words added raccoon are not going to be in the book when it gets published. And so we worked on this, and we made some changes with it, and then finally the book got published, and the book is Hello Harvest Moon. And I just thought I would take a minute and read it to you guys. Hello Harvest Moon, dedicated to my sisters, Elaine, Kathy, and Carolyn, who heard my mom sing the moon song when they were little girls. The crops have been gathered, the pumpkins have been picked, the silos are filled to bursting with a million ears of corn, tired farmers are fast asleep, but something is stirring at the edge of the world, something's rising low in the trees. It comes up round, ripe, and huge over autumn fields of corn and wheat. Hello, Harvest Moon. With silent slippers it climbs the night stairs, lifting free of the treetops to start working its magic, staining earth and sky with a ghostly glow. Harvest moonlight brushes your face, makes you stir and blink, wake and wonder. Who left on that outside light? What radiance is streaming into your room? It's so bright, you can read your favorite book without even turning on the lamp. And I got up early and went out at night to see if you can read by moonlight, and you can. Outside, the yards and streets seem to be covered by a sparkling tablecloth. Birch trees shine as if they've been double dipped in moonlight. If you're lucky, you might spy a few large lunar moths performing their ballet in the crisp, cool air. I love spiders, so I have to always find a way to get spiders in my book. A garden spider builds her web, hoping to catch an insect drawn to the great lamp in the sky. Milkweed pods have cracked open, spilling out spores like tiny moonlings floating up to their mother. If you played a nocturnal game of hide-and-go-seek and hid behind that huge pine tree, you'd be almost invisible, cloaked in moonshadow. Now it's bedtime, but not for everyone. Look overhead, a lone pilot is wide awake, looking down, muttering to herself, "With all this moonshine, it's like flying in broad daylight." A night watchman gets out of his bed, pulling on his boots, filling his thermos. He always packs his flashlight, though he wonders if he'll need it, going to work on a night like this. The harvest moon has its own work to do. It paints the wings of owls and nighthawks with a mixture of silver and shadow. It speaks to the moonflower, now, now, and sweet white blossoms unfold, though only night creatures will see them. It whispers to geese, away, away, and they become restless to start the long flight south. It's a beautiful page. Baby turtles emerge from eggs, tucked beneath the blanket of sand where their mother left them 2 months ago. They make a mad dash to the ocean. The harvest moonlight. The harvest moon moves the earth's waters. Grabbing whole oceans with its arms, it pulls in the high tide that will lift all the boats, every rowboat and yacht tied snug at the dock. It floods the clam flats with lonely lunar light, setting off an eruption of bubbles from clams and crabs tucked in mud. It floods us with dreams and memories of every full moon we've ever seen. It connects us to our distant ancestors who prayed to the harvest moon, yet feared it might be God's one unblinking eye. Finally, it starts to ease lower, sprinkling silver coins like a careless millionaire over ponds, lakes, and seas till all the money is spent. When you wake up, look to the western horizon and you might catch the moonset, a sleepy head winking, falling, slow motion under its pillow. Good night, harvest moon. Right. So, you can see the process that happened there in making that book and how important the writer's notebook was in generating those ideas. So I'm going to leave you guys with one suggestion of what you might want to write about. And maybe you've done this before, but it's kind of fun to do. And that is to write about your name. And you could write about your first name, your last name, your middle name. My middle name is Joseph, and I often think a lot about that name. My last name is Fletcher, and you may not know this, or maybe you do know this, that the Fletchers of yore were arrow makers. If you ever take a course on archery, you learn that the part of the arrow that has got the feathers on it is called the fletching. So in my book, Marshville Dreams, I have a chapter called The Fletcher, and it's about something that one of my brothers did by shooting an arrow straight up overhead. But anyway, which you should never do, by the way, ever. So anyway, I think that you might be surprised that you'll find that you've got something to say about your name. And let me just make a few suggestions to get you thinking about it, like to writing about your name. You could write about your feelings about your name. Do you like it? Do you ever wish that you were named something else? You could write about nicknames. When I was growing up, people used to call me Fletch. And a lot of my friends still call me Fletch. Um, you could write about misspellings of your name. How do you feel when somebody misspells? Or how about this? How do you feel when somebody mispronounces your name? Does that ever happen? It almost kind of makes you feel like they don't really see who you are. Um, and a few of you might even have the experience where your name changed. Maybe your mom um, got divorced and got into a new marriage, and you changed your name from your old last name to your new last name. Um, so just try that. See what happens. Write about your name, and that's the kind of thing also parents could do right alongside the students that are watching. So this has been great. This has been Writing with Ralph. I hope you have a wonderful day. Oh, and I thought maybe, I just would end with this one thing. And, we've been talking a lot about the writer's notebook. And there's a quote in here that I really love, which I just thought I'd share it with you because it's the last part of this book, but it's also one of my favorite quotes. It's by a fifth grader in my friend Lynn Hirschline's class in Long Island. And her name was Brianna Carlin, a wonderful writer. I love the way she describes the writer's notebook. So we'll just end with her words. A notebook is where you keep dewdrops from a dewdrop morning. It's where the sun sets. It's the wind in your face at the beach looking out over the water. A notebook is where you're playing with your dog. It's where you have dreams about walking on rainbows. It's where the good feelings and the bad feelings spend the night. Great, guys. Thanks very much. Keep writing.